Okay, in 10.2 we are going to look at Darwin's observations that he ended up making on the voyage of the Beagle. Something to keep in mind is that they did not automatically go to the Galapagos Islands. It was a mapping trip around the world, and they ended up stopping in the Galapagos at one point in time. It was only a short period of their trip around the world, but he ended up finding out a lot of things there in the Galapagos Islands. So Darwin observed differences among island species. So he ended up seeing that variation is a difference in a physical trait. So when he was there on the islands, one of the things that one of the governors had said, or the governor had said, is that he could tell you what island the tortoise was from just by the shape of the shell. And you can see right there that those two turtles or tortoises are completely different shapes with their shells, so you can see where that would be easy to identify. So the Galapagos tortoises that live in areas with tall plants have long necks and long legs. Another one was the finches on the islands that end up finding different beak shapes depending on what the finch was feeding on. So that is another thing that he ended up seeing that varied from island to island. So an adaptation is a feature that allows an organism to better survive in its environment. So species that are able to adapt to their environment are going to be usually the ones that survive. So adaptations can lead to genetic change in a population. So what that means is that if you end up having an adaptation that is beneficial, you're going to see that gene start to show up more and more in the population of that species. Darwin also observed fossils and geological evidence supporting an ancient Earth. So Darwin found fossils of extinct animals that resembled modern-day animals. So Darwin ended up, he found fossil shells high up in the Andes Mountains, and here's an example of that. Thing on the left is a Galapodont, and the thing on the right is an armadillo, and that's what people ended up saying, or Darwin ended up saying, like, this could have turned into that. So he saw land move from underwater to above sea level due to an earthquake on his trip. And Darwin extended his observations to the evolution of organisms as well. So when Darwin ended up getting back from his trip, he ended up starting to formulate his ideas on what occurred in nature with animals and what caused them to change. One of the key things from his book and the evolution theory is the idea of natural selection. So several key insights led to Darwin's idea for this natural selection. Darwin noticed that a lot of variation in domesticated plants and animals, and ended up you have artificial selection is the process by which humans select traits through breeding, and that's what you see down at the bottom. Is those are birds that had been altered because of man choosing. So natural selection is nature providing the variation and choosing what's best, and artificial selection is nature provides the variation and man chooses what they think is the best to get passed on. So natural selection is a mechanism by which individuals that have inherited beneficial adaptations produce more offspring on average than others do. Heritability is the ability to have a trait be passed down. It's going to be able to be inherited. So the struggle for survival is due to overpopulation and limited resources. All of these things are stuff that we've talked about throughout the school year with biology. So it's just, again, basically saying the most fit is going to be the one that survives. Darwin proposed that adaptations arose over many generations. So there are four main principles to the theory of natural selection. You need to have variation. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have natural selection occur. Overproduction, if you need to have more of things, so you end up with competition and things like that. You have adaptations. You have descent with modification. Descent with modification is another main idea of the evolution theory, and that's the idea saying that every organism came from a common ancestor. So if you go back, you're going to end up seeing, as time goes on, this one came from this one, which came from this one, which came from this one, and they've all changed and adapted to their environments. So, and then you have the descent with modification is what it's trying to show down there. So natural selection acts on existing variation. So natural selection can act only on traits that already exist. Structures take on new functions in addition to their original functions is going to be how an organism could adapt to its environment. So that is the end of the notes for section 2 and 3.